Hey. Thank you so much for joining me for this parenting workshop called Parenting Teen Girls in a Sexualized World: What Your Daughter Wishes You Knew. And I'll tell you a little bit about my background in a minute, but let me just tell you, in the 20 years that I have spoken to middle and high school girls, I keep saying that there's nothing that can shock me, and then I get shocked again. But I think what is the most disheartening for me is getting my inability to be able to, I'm not sure convince is the right word, but get parents to understand the need for them to get equipped to help their daughters. And I'm not sure that they always understand the things that their daughters are dealing with in today's culture and today's society. And so let me just tell you a couple of the stories that I think, where everybody thinks it's not going to be my daughter. And so I tend to get the call after a mom has found out her daughter has sent a new picture, or after she's found out that her daughter has had sex, or after she's found out that her daughter is pregnant. Like, I get that desperate call about, oh, what can I do? But it's hard for me to get parents to understand how to get the information and utilize my resources so that they're not in that situation. And let me share a couple of stories with you just to show you that it's not really that you don't ever have to worry about your daughter doing this, having sex, or making poor choices when it comes to relationships, because it could be any girl. But to encourage you, I will say that there are some things that you can do, like to be intentional, to increase the chances that you won't have a daughter who is that girl. So I remember when I was doing it was on Instagram, and I put a post out and said, if anybody, this was for teen girls, if any teen girl wants me to answer a question, I'm going to do some video answers of questions. And so if you just let me know, I'll post a video with your answer. And so I get a message from a young lady that said, can you do a video on how to move on after you've messed up? So I did the video, and then I sent her a direct message in case she didn't see it in my feed. And she was like, thank you so much. And she was 17 years old with a 5-year-old. Well, no, she was 17. Her son was 4 because she got pregnant at 12. She delivered at 13. And this was her story. She went to a private Christian school. She had a boyfriend when she was in the 7th grade, and he was in the 9th grade. It was a smaller school, so the middle school and the high school both shared the same cafeteria, even though they were on separate ends of the building. So she says that her boyfriend says to her one day, I want to spend time with you outside of school. Like, it's not enough for me just to see you in the cafeteria periodically. But if you came to my house, we have a lot of people, so we wouldn't have any privacy. What's the situation at your house? Y'all already know, right? So she says, my parents are divorced, and my mom doesn't get home until like 6:30. And he's like, oh, cool. I'll get my brother to drop me off after school, and we can do our homework together and just hang out. And her being so naive, like, she really thought that was what was going to happen. And so he came over multiple times, and she gets pregnant. And so I asked her, I said, was there any conversation even about using any kind of protection? And she said, I thought you had to be 14 to get pregnant. She thought she was too young to get pregnant, because she said every girl that I knew who had gotten pregnant, they were all at least 14. And so I thought I was too young to get pregnant. And I said, but had you started your menstrual cycle, right? And she says, yeah, I started my menstrual cycle at 11. But her mom, she says, my mom didn't even know I had a boyfriend, because I knew if she knew I had a boyfriend who was in high school and I was in middle school, she would have forbidden me from having a boyfriend. So I didn't tell her. So here's the thing. Her mom didn't think she needed to have a conversation with her about sex. Didn't think she needed to equip her about with knowledge, like resources like my book on why she shouldn't have sex. And she gets pregnant at 12 years old. I've gotten messages from moms who found out their daughter was having sex during the pandemic. The daughter was sneaking boys into the house. The mom reached out to me frantic, asking what she could do. She had my book and my DVD she had had since her daughter, for 3 years, since her daughter was 12. But she never let her daughter read it or watch the video because she didn't think she needed it, because she's not that kind of girl, or she's not dating. She's not in a relationship. Then I had the mom who was a gynecologist who called, and the mom had purchased my book. She said she and the daughter had gone through my book like recently. And the daughter was saying, oh, I would never do that. I would never do that. Only to find out the daughter had already had sex by the time she got the book for her. And she said, I see these girls all the time in my practice, and I had no idea that my daughter would end up being one of them. Then you have the mom. So I wrote myself some notes about the situation. Oh, then I had the girl who, this is in a middle to upper income school. And the daughter, 16 years old, told me that she was an ex-prostitute at 16. She said when my parents got divorced, my dad acted like he never had kids. And my mom started acting like a teenager again. And so she felt like she was, on her own. She met somebody who introduced her to this man. And she says, I can't even tell you how many men I've had sex with at 16. And you would have never looked at this girl and thought that she would be an ex-prostitute. Then you have the mom who reached out to me to talk to her daughter, who was a freshman in college. The daughter had gone to a public school and a private Christian college. And she had found out her daughter was making some poor choices. So she asked me if I would talk to her daughter. And I don't do that often, but whenever I kind of feel led or have the bandwidth to do it, which I don't always have, I will agree to do it. And her daughter was a lovely young lady. And this was one of the things that she said to me is she said, when I was in high school, I was the good girl. I was always put on a pedestal. I was the one that if they cursed in front of me, they would apologize because I was, on this pedestal. And I just felt like I had to live up to everybody's expectations of me being a good girl. Well, she gets to a private Christian college, and I'm no longer on a pedestal because we're all supposed to be doing that, but they weren't. And she's like, there was drinking, there was sex, there was all this stuff on my college campus that I had never been had participated in. So I felt like, I can finally let my hair down, and I don't have all this pressure on me of being on this pedestal. And so in all of these situations, I'm sure that, those moms probably thought, my daughter doesn't need this. Or not that they didn't think she needed it. It just didn't come to them that I need to prepare my daughter for a world that she's going to face. Even if at the time you think your daughter is, she's not even in a relationship. And we're going to talk later about when do you have the talk. And it's not just about the talk, but it's before you need to have it. That's the answer. You need to have it before it's necessary, if that makes sense. So anyway, like I said, I say that it could be your daughter, but there are some things that you can do to make sure that it won't be your daughter. So you may be a little nervous after you hear some of the things that I say initially, but it gets better toward the end because you might be a little shocked and you might be like, oh Lord, my child, does she have a chance with all this stuff that's going on? But at the end, I think I'll give you some hope and some encouragement and some resources. So let me just talk to you about who I am in case you haven't heard of me and why I do what I do. So this is where you will find me most days. So my background is in corporate America. I had a career in corporate America and just felt a calling to leave and work with teen girls. And I didn't leave to be a speaker that spoke to students specifically about sex. I left to start an after-school program that was going to be very holistic. Career planning, financial literacy, healthy relationships, goal setting. And just through a series of divine meetings, I ended up going into schools, talking to teenagers in their health classes about love, sex, and relationships. So I go into middle schools and high schools. In middle schools, we separate by gender. And so I'm only talking to 8th grade girls. High schools, they're co-ed classes. And I prefer high school classes because they are co-ed, because so much of the learning that happens in the class happens based on what they hear like other students, what other students are saying, and the girls get to hear how the guys think, and the guys get to hear how the girls think. But every time I go into a middle school and I talk to just 8th grade girls, I realize I can't stop talking to 8th grade girls because I want to prevent them from doing some of the things that high school girls are doing. And I realize that a big part of the issue is low self-esteem and lack of confidence. And so I can tailor that a little easier when I'm just talking to the girls. I can get to kind of the root of the issue. And it's just, and that breaks my heart. And so one of the things that I talk about, the subtitle for this thing is What Your Teen Daughter Wishes You Knew. Like, I'll talk to you later about a question that I ask, especially in 8th grade girl classes, about how are you going to parent differently. But anyway, so the bulk of my time is actually in high school classes, and middle and high school classes, I prefer the actual classroom presentation because that's where I've gotten all of my content and all of my knowledge because I've learned so much from them. But I also do assemblies across the country, and but an assembly is just a presentation where I can't really hear feedback like I do in a classroom. So you might find me doing assembly some days, or you might find me somewhere reading letters because I have received over 17,000 letters from high school students and alone. This isn't including what I've gotten from middle school students. These are just high school student letters. And so there are days I have 200 or 300, 400 letters that I've read because they just start accumulating. And so what I do is, like the top left, you'll see when the girls are gone to lunch, I'll take letters and I'll read while they're at lunch. I go to Chick-fil-A, and read letters. This in the bottom left is I picked up some letters from my high school. That was a group. And you can see how long these letters are. And the letters are not even, like, they're anonymous. But I don't even tell them what to say other than what impact will the classes have on your future decisions? What did you think about what you heard? Was there anything that made it click? If so, let me know that. If you say, don't ever leave this out. And the letters actually help me stay relevant because they let me know where the kids are. And so then the kids started just telling me their stories. And they started, telling me about their regrets and saying, if you share this with another class, like, let them know not to do what I did. And so then I shared letters on the board as a part of my presentation. And that's one of the things that students say one of the things that makes it click the most is hearing what other students have said because they recognize themselves in those letters sometimes. So anyway, so that's where you might find me. So here are some things that I think parents don't always realize is how different the world is today than it might have been when you were a teenage girl. And I'm saying teenage girl, and I know some dads might watch this, but it's hard. I'm really talking to teen moms, but it applies to either. If you're a dad, thank you for watching this. So don't be offended if I keep saying moms, but so here are some of the things that are different. Number one, social media. I mean, can you imagine haven't had social media when you were a teenager? I don't know how old you are, so I'm trying to think when social media came out, whether it would be feasible that some moms of teen girls might have had social media. But anyway, even if there was social media, it's not as bad as it is now. And if you think about it, like I had a girl say that her mom told her that when she was in school, even if she was being bullied, she could go home and get away from the bully. But today, there's cyberbullying. So social media makes it almost like a 24/7 harassment if that is what's happening. And then you have the impact on self-esteem. And there are tons of studies out there that show the more time that teens spend on social media, especially teen girls, the lower their self-esteem is. And it's funny, I took my next door neighbor out to dinner when she turned 13. And I made a comment to her about social media. And she said, I don't have social media. And I said, really? And she said, yeah. And I said, your mom won't let you have social media? And she said, no, it was my choice. And I said, wow. I said, so why did you choose? And she said, I'm stressed out enough with my grades. She said, plus I see how stressed my friends are based on social media and all the comparison. And she said, why would I want to watch a play-by-play on Snapchat of the party that I didn't get invited to? And you think about it, when we were in school, if we didn't get invited to a party, half the time we didn't even know there was a party. But now this generation of teens, they have to watch all of them being excluded. They have to watch it on social media. And it's just such a hit on their self-esteem. It's this whole social media and comparing. It was bad enough that they compare themselves to other girls at school. Now you compare yourselves to all these girls on social media who are using filters, and they're thinking that, my life is horrible, and they don't realize is what they're seeing is their highlight reels, and nobody's putting the real stuff out there. So you have that, and then you have technology in general, like just the pressure that anything you do could be recorded and played back and could humiliate you for a long time. The pressure of them getting asked for nude pictures. Like I heard somebody say once that we would never buy our kids a car or give them a car, keys to a car, without proper driver's ed and how to use it. But a lot of times, parents will give their kids cell phones without and expect that their brains are developed enough to handle everything that comes with the technology with the cell phone. And like there needs to be some contracts. There needs to be some there needs to be boundaries based on, them having the cell phone. Like even just from a mental health standpoint, things are very different. School shootings, I was at a middle school and they had an active shooter drill. And I just thought, wow, like never in my wildest dreams when I was in school would I even think that in addition to a tornado drill or a fire drill, which is all we had when I was in school, that there would come a day where you would actually have to practice what to do if there was an active shooter in the building. And so now you have girls' mental health that's suffering because they live in a world that's very different, that it's just a fearful time for people because you don't even know whether, you're safe at school. And then all the sexualization that's in the media where kids are just almost forced to grow up at such a young age and they're being exposed to things so young that we would have never gotten exposed to. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. But so that's kind of the difference between then versus now. And for you to understand that, and most parents tell me that they didn't even get the conversation or their parents didn't talk to them about sex or didn't talk to them about healthy relationships. If you didn't get it, but you wish you had, imagine what it's like for your kids not to get it if you're not having those conversations with them. The struggle is real. It's huge. And where does the pressure come from? A number of places. Peer pressure. But peer pressure is not just external peer pressure, it's internal peer pressure as well. And which is why it's so important to monitor who their friends are. Because it's not necessarily that somebody's going to come and say, do it, and you're too weak to say no. They're too weak to say no. It's oftentimes the pressure they put on themselves because they don't want to be left out. They don't want to be different. Sometimes the pressure comes from their boyfriends, and so many girls just don't think they have a choice, and they think that's expected. The culture, like huge pressure from the media, social media, movies, music. I mean, think about it. The only person not having sex in movies are nerds and married people. I mean, it's just everybody in the media basically is doing it. It's like sex is inevitable. It's just part of what comes with the territory. I've even got letters from students who've said that I made them feel better because there was a movie, and this is an old movie, but they were watching an old movie called American Pie, and especially for guys, they're like, the guy in the movie basically said, if you're a teenager, you're not having sex, something must be wrong with you. And then, exposure to pornography. And we always have thought that was boys. Huge issue for girls. And I've had 8th grade girls tell me that they're addicted, and definitely high school girls. I always ask the students, what percentage of teens do they think watch porn? And it averages between 75 and 90%. And then I'll say, do y'all think that the number is higher for girls or guys, or is it even? And some of them will say, I think it's higher for girls. But I think generally most people will say if there is a difference, it's not a big difference. And that's what I would say too. I would say I do think boys probably watch it more, But I think girls are right behind them. I don't think it's much different. So, why do teen girls have sex? So, these are all things that girls have told me in their letters. And one of the first things that I do when I go into a high school class is I will ask them whether they think we have a healthy culture in our society. And even they admit that it's not healthy. And then I will show a slide with some reasons why teen girls have sex on the first slide. The second slide is why teen guys have sex. And then I will ask them, and they're exact excerpts from letters that I've received. And so I'll ask them, do you think those are good reasons or not? So I'm going to share some of those reasons with you, just so you can see the typical mindset of teen girls today. So sometimes it's pressure from their boyfriends. So this girl says, the first and only time I ever had sex was this past summer. The guy I was dating at the time had pressured me for sex all summer. All he wanted from that relationship was sex. He was always touching or attempting to touch me inappropriately, but lured me to give him sex. Until one day in June when I finally gave in. I was so annoyed that he kept bugging me for sex that I figured if I gave in, he'd get off my back. Now, as an adult, like your brain is fully developed, right? My brain's fully developed. Like as an adult, we're like, what? Do you not realize that once you have sex the first time, that's all he's going to ever want? But here in her undeveloped teen brain mind, she thinks, well, let me just get him off my back by giving him what he wants so he can stop asking. I got nothing out of this situation. And in fact, I spent a good portion of it kind of bored. I know that I don't want to have sex again. I had hoped it would get this boy off my back, but it didn't. Of course it didn't. Then you have the girls who don't think they have a choice. This girl says, I agreed to have sex with my ex-boyfriend because I thought it was what I was supposed to do, to pay him back for his service as an awesome boyfriend. Can y'all see? Like these girls in their naivete, like really, really think these are legitimate reasons to have sex. This girl says, I'm a junior and I have a boyfriend who's not a virgin, so I felt obligated. I felt that in a few months I'd just have to, but he said he'd never force me to do anything. Now I know it is my choice and my choice only. And honestly, I think I can definitely wait. She had to hear a speaker before she realized that it was her choice. So many of these girls do not think they have a choice. Daddy issues. Oh my goodness. A lot of times guys will say, every girl I've had sex with had daddy issues. I said, what do you mean by that? Either she didn't have a father in her life or she didn't have a good relationship with her father and she was expecting me to make up for something she didn't get from her father, which was to give her validation and acceptance. One of the most common things I read in girls' letters when they'll say, the reason I had sex because he was the first guy who made me feel special. And you know what? In a healthy society, that would have been her father. But we don't live in a healthy society. So now you have girls who run into arms of guys expecting the guy to do something that's not even his job. This girl says, I'm a 15-year-old girl and I am a 15-year-old girl in her sophomore year. Personally, I wanted to say thank you for allowing me to realize the purpose I have. I myself am considered to have daddy issues. I've never really had a stable relationship with my father since he walked out and divorced my mom when I was 10. Anyways, with that at hand, I've always felt like I needed someone to approve of me. I felt unwanted and just needed someone to tell me that I'm better than the stuff I've been thinking of doing. Basically, I just wanted to say thank you so much for helping me realize again that my morals and life mean something. That's a huge, huge, huge reason. So I'm going to share with you a video that I did. And I'll talk to you at the end about this masterclass I did based on my book, 7 Secrets Guys Will Never Tell You. A Teen Girl's Guide on Love, Sex, and Relationships. During the pandemic, I did a masterclass called 7 Secrets Revealed, and I had about 15 guests that I interviewed that the girls got to hear from. And Michael was one of the guys that I interviewed. He's a father of 2 teenage girls at the time. Well, one was a college student, one was a teenager, and then a son who was, I think at the time, was in the 6th grade. And he shared about the benefits of an active father. So check out his video. So let me ask you, how do you think a girl's relationship with her father influences her dating and relationship decisions?
Yeah. So we've talked earlier about feelings. And what I believe is if a father is doing his job, um, there are certain things that he should make his daughter feel um, protected, valued, respected, loved, appreciated. Um, moms are nurturers, and they can fill in some of those gaps, but it's something about the father that really speaks into the identity of the child. And I think that goes for sons as well, but really for daughters. And so I think that that's the beginning of it, is like a girl who's had that kind of pouring in to her from her father just enters the world with another, like, just a higher level of security and self-image, where she's not wondering what some man thinks about her. She's been told what the man thinks about her, and so everything else has to bounce off of that. I always say, like, you get a chance to be your child's first source of truth. So like when parents don't talk to their kids about sex, like, you're missing the opportunity. Same thing when you don't talk to your child about who they are and what they were created for and the beauty that you see in them and the potential, then you allow somebody else to speak that into them. So I think that's the first thing. Um, then I think the second part, so I think it's identity, but I think it's also expectation. And my daughters are watching how I treat their mom. And then as they get older, they're watching how I treat them. I had a real candid conversation with my youngest daughter. I can get a little hype sometimes. And I realize that, like, sometimes it may come off as aggression. And she came to me and told me how it made her feel when I talked to her in such a heightened tone. And I'm not thinking I'm yelling or anything. I'm just passionate. And I was like, you know what? My thought was, I don't want her to ever think it's okay for a boyfriend or anybody else to talk to her in a way that makes her feel that way. So I got to check myself and change that. I got to find a way to get the same thing across to her without making her ever feel like there's threat. Because I don't want her to think, oh, that's normal. So I think that's the other thing. So I think there's this idea of like identity. And I think it's also about expectation. A father gets to set the tone on both of those things.
I love what Michael said. He was really, really good during this master class that I did, and I'll give you more information about the master class if you want to hear other things that he's saying. I have another video that I'm going to show of his too. But I think that's key about how important it is for the dad to be there, and when he's not, the girl is vulnerable. Another reason that girls have told me to have sex is to relieve stress and family problems. This girl says, I learned that sex isn't just a stress reliever. It doesn't have to be a way to help my self-esteem. That's why I have been using sex only to help me through stress and family problems. I try not to push sex onto my boyfriend because I feel bad after. If I don't get sex from him again, I get mad and beat myself up in the head. So this is another shock that I've had of the last 20 years, is that oftentimes girls are the aggressors and the initiators of sex. And so it has gotten to the point where, for me, it is often easier for me to talk a teenage boy out of having sex than it is a girl. And there's some reasons for that I'll share. I'll share it at a later date because it's kind of deep. And that was not the case when I started doing this 20 years ago. Times have really changed. She says, I have been depressed for years. I only am happy around my boyfriend and by sex. My best friend moved away and I got even more depressed. I don't take pills. Thank you for teaching me my life. My life does matter. So she is trying to relieve stress, or my heart just breaks so often when I read these letters and I'm like, oh, babies, like, oh, it's crazy. The next reason is to feel loved. This girl says, I feel like I could relate to everything you said. It made me feel a lot better about the things I've been through. I would have sex to get the feeling of love and the feeling of being wanted because my mom never gave me that feeling. When I turned 17, I found out I was pregnant. The guy I was messing with didn't want anything to do with me. And even though he did me horrible, I still looked out for him. I knew he had a future for football and I didn't want to mess it up, so I got an abortion. I know I shouldn't have because it's not a part of my beliefs, but I didn't want to have a kid and not know 100% if the dad was going to be there. I felt horrible for months and it still bothers me. But your lesson made me feel better about myself and made me think more about my future. Thank you. Like I am Girls do so much to please guys. And please, I mean, we're people pleasers. And I just got an email last night, not an email, a message on Instagram last night, direct message from a young lady who wanted me to tell her whether I thought she was pregnant or not because, I had sex with this guy and I know that it was right when I was ovulating and I checked the condom, I did a water test and I'm like, why are you going through all of this? Like, y'all. Oh, and this one breaks my heart too. When girls say, I didn't think I had anything to protect because I wasn't a virgin anyway. This girl says, I'm in love with a boy who's a virgin. I'm not a virgin. He asked me for sex the week before you came to my class and I was bothered about it. He kept saying if I love him, it shouldn't be a problem because he loves me and he's promised to be with me forever. Right. Like, our brains are fully developed. We know that. She doesn't. At first, I thought it was pointless to keep saying no when I'm not a virgin. And I hate it when girls think that they don't have anything to protect just because they're no longer a virgin. I'm like, you have your future to protect. But when you talk to us, it changed my mindset about the decision I was about to make. Now I am proud to say, even though I am not a virgin, I still have a future to protect. So the choice is left with him to make, whether he leaves or stays, because I'm done trying to make him understand. And let me tell you, this is what I'm doing can be one of the most disheartening things I've ever done. I've left schools and cried all the way home just from being heartbroken about a story that a girl told me while she was crying in my arms or a letter that I read. But when I get letters like this and I know that something that I said changed a girl's mindset and prevented her from making a poor decision that could have cost her her future, her life, it makes it all worth it. It makes it all worth it. And then you have the impact of the media. And I just don't think parents always understand how powerful the media is. This girl says, I think it's really easy to get caught up in the idea of sex, especially because it's glamorized in books and movies and TV shows, but that's not how real life works. And you really reinforce the idea in my head that saving myself is important on so many levels. I appreciate you for making me realize that letting society make me is a very stupid decision. And from now on, I will think about everything you said whenever I find myself in a situation that may ruin my future. And that's one of the things, too, that I found that has been effective is, like, kids hate to feel like they're being used or they're being controlled. And I like to be able to help them understand how much they're allowing society and the media and the culture to control their choices. And it makes them, like, want to rebel against, like, the culture. And I tell them, I say, if you want to be rebellious, rebel against the culture of low expectations. A culture that expects you to act like you're just a hormone-driven teenager that can't control your hormones and that has no self-control. And this one always breaks my heart. I was just talking to somebody about this morning. And I just don't think we realize how common rape and molestation of kids, and I don't even know that it's a new thing. Because I've been amazed by the number of people, even my friends, that before I started doing this, I would have not had a clue. And then when I say something like, yeah, that's like it happened to me or when it happened to me, and I'm like, what? Like you were raped and molested? It is a huge issue. This girl says, when I was 13 years old, my uncle raped me. Ever since that moment in my life, I felt like I would need to have sex with a boy for him to like me. When you were here, you spoke about how girls who were raped oftentimes feel like damaged goods. 6 sexual partners and 4 pregnancies later, I realized that damaged goods is exactly how I defined myself. I'm a month into my 4th pregnancy, and I can't help but wonder how my child will look at me because I know that whatever is done in the dark will come to light. My last 3 pregnancies couldn't have ended worse. I had 2 miscarriages and an abortion. Whenever I hear a child cry, I cry. Thank God I've never had any kind of STD or infection, but at the rate I was going, I believe if I hadn't stopped, I would have caught something. Oh, I can't tell you how many times I've had to report a rape or molestation that had happened that the student had never reported. And I'm a mandated reporter. I was just in a school 2 weeks ago, and it was in an 8th grade class, and I gave a trigger warning that I was going to talk about sexual assault and consent and where to go to get help if that had ever happened to you. And I said, so even though I think it would be good for you to stay if that has been your experience, because I think you might learn some things, and there's some things that I might say that can help you. I said, if you think it's going to be too traumatic, feel free. I'll stop right before I get to that point. And the teacher said, I can take you to another classroom. So I was doing 4 classes that day. The first class, 6 girls got up and left. The second class, 2 girls got up and left. The third class, nobody left, but I had to watch a girl sit there and fight back tears like the entire time. And that's a struggle. Like for me to continue talking, knowing that, and having to also see somebody struggling, because I know that they're fighting back tears, that's their experience. And this young lady came up to me after the class, after everybody left, and said that she had had sex when she was in the 6th grade at 11 years old with a 15-year-old boy. And she said her parents had found out, but she said, but I lied about my age. She's because my dad died when I was younger, and even though I have a stepdad, it's not the same. And I've always craved for boys' attention. And so when I was 11 in the 6th grade, I lied to this boy and told him I was 13. And she didn't really say that she got raped, but she didn't give consent. And that's the other thing, that girls won't necessarily call it rape. They'll say, I'm not going to say I got raped. I just didn't want to do it. Because that's a whole nother workshop that is needed. And so she said that when her parents found out, because she knew her stepdad would go and beat the boy up and he would get in trouble, that she told him that it was her idea, that she was, and she said, so now for the past 2 years, because she was in 8th grade, she said, my parents have looked at me differently, and they've been so disappointed in me because but I didn't want, she was trying to protect the dad from keeping him from having to go to jail. So she lies and says, it was my idea, I wanted it. So she would rather have, like, be the one that is the bad person to protect her dad. And so, of course, I had to go and I had to tell the counselor, and there are way too many of those. I thought of another story, but I can't tell all my stories because this will last forever. And then you have low self-esteem. So this girl says, my self-esteem was nearly non-existent because I didn't like the way I looked. I figured physical displays of affection were the only validation I'd have, if that makes sense. And if I could take back everything I did in those 2 years with those 2 boys, I would without hesitation. If you had come to speak during my middle school, I probably wouldn't have made the mistakes that I made. Thank you so much. I think, to me, this is probably the number one reason, or the underlying reason that girls have sex. I'm going to show you a quote in a minute that'll explain to you what I'm saying. I think the other thing is they don't love or value themselves. This girl says, I'm still a virgin, but was on the verge of making the mistake of losing my virginity for my boyfriend. I have low self-esteem, and since he wanted it, I thought I could prove I'm worth it by doing it. I'm so glad I didn't. I am more self-confident now and see my value, and I want to save myself for my future husband. These are the letters that keep me going, is knowing that this girl had this epiphany, and that now she sees her value, and that now she's more self-confident than she was before she heard me speak, and she was getting ready to lose her virginity to her boyfriend. Now, this one isn't about sex. This is just about sending a nude picture. She says that she did it for excitement. I asked my friend to send a nude picture of him. So see, I told you girls are just as aggressive. This girl is the one asking the boy for the nude picture. And we always think the girls are the victims. Girls are aggressive. To my surprise, he did it. Since he did it, I felt obligated to do the same, and I sent him a picture of myself. At the moment, I did it to feel excited, to have something exciting happen to me, but I later regretted it. I've always been one to be strong, but that one time I let my guard down, He gained something on me. A month has passed, and I'm still lucky that he didn't say this to anyone and that he deleted it. And she doesn't know that he really deleted it. Because I've had those happen where kids have airdropped the pictures to the whole cafeteria. Oh my goodness, it's crazy. So this one is one that is just crazy, but I've heard it more than once, where they say they only had sex because they wanted to rebel against strict parents. This girl says, I grew up with very strict parents who drilled into my head all the things I couldn't do and all the ways I should act. This control led to nothing but rebelliousness and hate for authority. Once I reached high school, I realized that there was so much more to the world than the box my parents kept me in. From there, I started drinking, drugs, and even sex. Fortunately, I haven't had to pay for the consequences for any of my poor decisions yet, but you helped me realize the seriousness of my choices. Because you came, I've started to rethink a lot of my choices and have begun to restructure my life. Thank you so much for coming and possibly saving my life. Please keep talking to kids. You'll never know the difference you'll make, even to the kids who just sit there quietly and listen. This is why I do what I do. And let me tell you, when I was on the master class with the girls, the 7-6 Reveal master class, one of the girls put in the chat they were complaining about their parents being really strict and wanting to rebel. And so I asked Michael to speak to the whole having sex just in order to rebel issue. And he gave a great response. Check that out.
So since you brought up the whole parenting thing, let me go there, because the other night there was some conversation in the chat just about the fact that when parents are really strict, it makes them want to rebel because they want to make some of their own decisions. And so I was trying to help them understand that, yes, your parents may be hurt, but if you're trying to hurt your parents by rebelling, you're really the one that's going to get hurt. So can you speak to that whole, and you kind of started with you get to this age where you want some independence. How does that, what do you think about teens rebelling as a result of parents, what they consider as parents being too strict?
Yeah. I understand the frustration with that. Here's what I would say. If I was talking to parents, I would talk to them about, I do think there's a time, I remember, my kids, my youngest is 11, as they were growing up, I always say you go from like standing in front of them, telling them what to do, to standing really shoulder to shoulder and kind of showing them the world. And the more you try to stay in front of them, the more they are going to get this desire to rebel. So I totally get it. And I've actually had to adjust my parenting style as they got older to reflect that. But maybe your parent doesn't get that and understand that. Even when that's the case and they are strict, what you will do that will justify their strictness is when you start rebelling and making decisions that prove their point. Because no one who is in conflict with another person is going to do something to inflict pain on themselves if they're wise and mature. So what you think you're doing to hurt them really is doing long-term damage to yourself. And if that's your definition of rebellion, what you're proving to them is that, yes, you are absolutely right. I am not mature enough to navigate this because I'm going to pout, throw a temper tantrum, and go have sex and possibly put my future in jeopardy. You're not, as much as you're breaking their heart, you're damaging your future. And so that's just not what you would want to do. I think another approach is to write a letter, communicating how you feel, to look for what I call creating some agreements. Like, look, let's agree on. I remember like talking to my oldest daughter about like when she wanted to date. And it wasn't about like when you're 18 or when you're 17. It was about like, let's create some agreements around maturity, around priorities, around relationships. And if you are meeting these, your end of the bargain on these agreements, then I am willing to meet this young man, and then we can go from there. And I think it helped her navigate and feel like she had some say-so in the decision. So that's what I would tell parents. It has worked. I know all parents are different. All situations are different. So until your parents get to that point, you still have a responsibility of taking really good care of yourself, and don't let that feeling of rebellion lead to a decision of destruction. And this is part of the challenge with like parenting a teenager who is maturing, growing, making decisions, has some autonomy. But here's what we've been told: like the brain doesn't fully develop to 26. So I think about all the decisions I made up to like being an adult beyond college. And I can look back because I was not perfect. I can look back at some of those decisions and say like, wow, at the time, it felt like the most serious relationship or the best thing to do. And looking back, but those decisions don't change, nor do the consequences. So as a parent, you're trying to navigate like, I want you to have some freedom and I want to trust you. But I also know that you are at a critical juncture where a decision can change everything. And so I have to still help you navigate this. And it's weird because you feel like an adult, your body changes, you have, relationships that are mature relationships. But as a parent, what I know, and as an adult, what we know is like, not yet, not yet. And sometimes I've got some friends at 27 that were still behaving like they were 19. Their brain was still developing. So, and it's not a bad thing. It's not an insult to say that. That is just the reality of human development.
One of the things I forgot to say, and this video reminded me of it, I forgot to say at the beginning that I think it would be a good idea to even watch this with your daughter, because I think it would give you some good conversation starters. And sometimes I tell moms, watch it by yourself first, and then like you can develop like which points you want to have further discussion about, and then watch it a second time with your daughter, or watch it initially with your daughter, whatever. If you have a daughter that is being rebellious, that clip would be a good clip to show her. So you know what you're dealing with, and what parts of this would like speak to the situation that you may be dealing with. And here's the thing that I tell parents, like rules without a relationship leads to rebellion. And, some of the parents, it's because I said so, because I'm the parent, like those kind of things are the things that'll like cause your child to be rebellious. But a relationship without rules often leads to promiscuity when it comes to the whole sex issue. The parents who say, I'm just going to be your friend, we're just, no boundaries, nothing, like just do what you want to do. That's promiscuity. Positive parenting is when there are rules along with the relationship, when you have both. And I'll tell you, during the pandemic, I had a video that went viral. And I couldn't figure out like what was going on, because I was getting like hundreds and hundreds and thousands of comments every day. I was getting hundreds of followers, 1,000 new followers every day, and like tens of thousands of views on this video that was 6 years old. The video was for parents, but the comments were from teenagers. And the name of the video was Parents, this is what could happen if you're too strict on your parents. So we were trying to figure out, why did this video resurface like 6 years later? And why are all these teens watching this video? And we realized what happened is YouTube had started suggesting my video. You know how when you watch YouTube, then they'll put stuff in the column on the right, suggest other suggested videos. They had started suggesting my video based on searches that were being done by teens. And what teens were searching for during the pandemic was how to be sneaky with strict parents. And so because the keywords were strict parents, and YouTube was, and so these kids were watching it. And then I was reading comments like, can somebody translate this to Mandarin? Can somebody translate this to another language? And it was viewed by people in 161 countries. So this issue is universal. I guess that's the moral of that story. But then the kids started saying, how can I show this to my mom without her knowing it's from me? And then they started listing things about, let me tell you what strict parents teach you. And it was stuff like how to hide stuff under your pillow, how to do this. And it was just crazy, all the things that they were listing about. This is what I've learned from having strict parents. I've learned how to hide this. I've learned how to do this. I've learned how to lie. I've learned how to do this. Just just craziness. So I love this quote by this psychologist, Ashley Warner. It says, beneath every behavior is a feeling, and beneath each feeling is a need. And when you meet that need, instead of focusing on the behavior, we begin to deal with the cause and not the symptoms. And I think that is so powerful and so true. Because if you look at all the reasons that I just listed, that you just read about why teen girls said they were having sex, excitement, daddy issues, because I wanted to get attention, because I wanted to feel loved, those were the needs. So the feeling they were getting was the feeling of excitement, the feeling of being loved, the feeling of being wanted. And that's a legitimate need. So when we get to the bottom of this need, we can deal with the cause and not the symptom, because I often say teen sex is a symptom of a much bigger issue. And I say we don't have a sex problem, we have a lack of value problem. We have a problem with teenagers not valuing themselves enough to protect themselves. So then I started sharing that quote with teenagers in the classroom. And I started saying, this is what I tell your parents, but I think you could benefit from using this with your own life. Before you get ready to make a decision, it may be a bad decision, ask yourself, what feeling do I want from this choice? And what need will that feeling meet for me? And then if you know it's a bad choice, then you can ask yourself, what's a healthier way for me to meet that need? Because a lot of times they don't even realize why they're doing what they're doing either. They don't even realize that for them, sex is something of a much bigger issue. Like that letter the girl was saying, she didn't realize until I said it that that makes sense. Daddy issues. I never thought, but after you said it, it made sense. So anyway, this is one that you should screenshot, because I think you should put this on your refrigerator door to remind you as you parent, whenever you're upset about your child's behavior, I need to get to the root cause. And then this is the one that I don't know. I keep saying this is the one that breaks my heart the most. I don't know which one breaks my heart the most, but I hate it when they say it just happened. This girl says, I regret my first time having sex. It wasn't special, and it proves how thoughtless your actions can be. Nothing was going through my mind. Nothing. My mind was blank. And do you know why it just happened? I think because kids do not know how to set boundaries. They don't know how to set boundaries. This girl says, before your talk, I didn't think it was a big deal to set too many boundaries for myself. I figured I would just have sex when I really love someone and when I'm ready. But you've made me think about the possible repercussions of not setting more concrete boundaries. I could ruin my future and any possible future relationships. I could put myself in such a bad situation just because I didn't think to slow down. And you know what? It is one of the reasons why I created an e-course for teen girls called Dating Boundaries 101, because I just think this is one of the big reasons how it ends up happening. Not necessarily why it happens, but how. Because a lot of girls don't plan on having sex the first time they have sex, or many of the other times they have sex. Things just got out of hand. They got caught up in the heat of the moment. It just happened. So they need to keep themselves out of the heat of the moment situation. So I have an e-course called Dating Boundaries 101, and it's 7 videos. And I always talk about the fact that when girls say I didn't plan to have sex, I say it's not enough not to plan to have sex. You must have a plan on how not to have sex. And so this e-course gives them, they end up with a 1-page game plan where they set boundaries in 4 different areas. I talk about why they need boundaries, how to set their boundaries, the areas they need to have boundaries in, and what to do if the other person isn't respecting their boundaries. That is in the e-course that I have. And I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end. So Dr. Tart shares, and he's a psychologist that deals a lot with teen girl issues. A lot of his patients are teen girls. He shares what he believes to be the number one issue of teen girls today.
Loneliness.
I had another pediatrician tell me the same thing.
Loneliness. This is the generation that is the loneliest of any generation before. With all the friends on Snapchat and Instagram, most teens will tell you, I don't think I have 4 or 5 friends that will really be there for me if I need them, if I really need them to be there for me. They'll rather text or like a post, but they won't call me if I really need them. And so loneliness. And there are a lot of girls that don't have quality friendships with other girls. Matter of fact, they believe the media. They believe the media that girls are messy. I don't like girls, or you shouldn't trust girls. And so they're friends with guys. But what happens is that leads them to only rely on the guy for attention. So they can't make good decisions if he's all of their attention or most of their attention. So I see a lot of girls that just don't know how to be friendly with other girls.
I wasn't expecting you to say that, but that's a very, very, very good point. So how can, like, what's the solution to that? I mean, how do we help girls not be lonely?
All right, well, one, before you can date, you have to have 3 to 4 quality girlfriends. You can't date unless you have 3 to 4 quality girlfriends that you spend time with. Otherwise, you're going to be too thirsty. Your self-esteem is going to be too wrapped around him. If he's not talking to you and you've drawn the line, I don't need to talk to him for 2 days. He's been misbehaving. Yeah, that sounds good. But then your phone's not blowing up. There's no text. There's no Instagram messages, no DMs from the guy that you want. And so you end up compromising. And it's hard for you to set those boundaries when you made this guy your only source of positive attention. So I say, parents, your kids can't date without 3 to 4 quality girlfriends, and then showing them how. That sounds good, but how do you make friends with girls? It's not easy. With guys, I know you, you know me. We on the same basketball team, on the same street. We have the same cousin. We wear the same Jordans. All right, we're cool. But with girls, it's much more intricate. So we have to actually teach girls how to, especially in the beginning of school, when everyone wants to connect. There's a critical period, and if you wait past that critical period, you're having to actually join an established group, which is very difficult for girls. So I require parents to make sure that their girls have 3 to 4 quality girlfriends before they date, and also debunk the myth that girls don't need girlfriends when it comes to like reality TV. That's a myth, and the ones that don't have them are in dysfunctional relationships.
Yeah, because I have so many girls say they don't want girlfriends.
Right.
I mean, they specifically say I only have dudes who are my friends.
Right.
Because just like you said, they think girls are messy. And I do think a lot of that has to do with this whole we're in a generation of reality TV.
And they've been hurt. So there are some girls who are messy. Let's just be real.
That's true.
All right, let's be real. They told them something, they went back and they told someone else, or when they got in an argument, they used confidential information against them, or maybe they talked to a boy that they liked. There's a lot of things that happen. There's a lot of social wrongs that are going on with teens, so they're just not trained. They're just not trained. But you have to find 3 or 4. You don't need to be friends with all the girls in the school, but you should be able to find 3 or 4 quality, solid girlfriends that's willing to have your back every day of the week.
Because when they're lonely, where does that lead them?
You need attention. And guys are more than happy to give you attention, and guys are more than willing to exploit your need for attention. So it's not that girls are fast. It's not the fact that they're thirsty by nature. We all need attention. Let's be real. Right. Who wants to go into school and no one talks to you? Who wants the opposite gender to ignore you? No one wants that. And so you find different ways to get that attention. And sometimes ways of getting that attention for a girl and a guy, but it's unhealthy. So we have to help them establish a baseline of attention. If you think about Friday, Saturday night, if your girls, you're hanging out, you're eating pizza, you're going to the game, you're not thinking about a guy as much as if you are at home by yourself. No one's texting you. No one's paying attention. Then you start to need that guy because you drop below your threshold for what's adequate when it comes to attention.
I think that's so true and very powerful. It breaks my heart when I walk into classrooms and we're waiting for class to start. And I remember when I was in school, like that was the time you caught up with your friends and you're talking. And I go in and now everybody has their head in a screen. They're either listening to music, they're playing games, they're texting, they're scrolling through Instagram. And it's like, and even like interpersonal skills. I think it's a lot more difficult for teenagers to really develop interpersonal skills because they don't have to use them. You know, at first it was like nobody wanted to talk on the phone. I mean, nobody wanted to talk in person. They wanted to talk on the phone. And now, even the young people that I know, it's like I want to call them. They're like, text me instead. And I'm like, okay. It's sad. It breaks my heart. So one of the things is the talk. When, where, and how. So I think like there's almost like there's a misperception that there is something called the talk. And I think it's no one talk. Like there should be a series of conversations. And I think one of the biggest issues and mistakes that a lot of parents make is they start out by talking about sex instead of healthy relationships. And if you can start out talking about healthy relationships, you don't have to wait until a certain age, because you can talk about healthy relationships and even friendships. And even when they're in elementary school or when they're toddlers, you can use, when they're in elementary school, before you get ready to talk about sex, you can use the media or things that you see out in the public about, what do you think about what just happened? What do you think about what we just saw? I mean, because you're not going to be able to prevent them from seeing stuff as much as you want to, not 100%. I mean, I do think there's some things you can do to monitor it, how much they're exposed to, but you're not going to be with them 24/7. But even when you're with them, and innocent television shows now have commercials or, you know, things that are inappropriate, then you have those conversations about what was healthy about that, what was not healthy. I think the biggest thing you can do, especially with girls, is talk about love, because a lot of girls are looking for love in all the wrong places. And so you can start having the love conversation about why they should love themselves. Because I just believe that if you teach them to love themselves, it will take a lot less work to talk them out of having sex. And we'll talk about that in just a minute, a little bit more. But I think and I said this earlier, the time to have the talk is before they need to talk. The time to have the talk is before they start dating. You know, the mom with the 12-year-old didn't know her daughter was dating, so she didn't have a conversation with her, and the daughter gets pregnant. And here's why it needs to happen, but even before they're in a relationship, because then you're talking in general, and they don't feel like you're confronting them personally, and you're not attacking them, and you're not talking about them. You're just talking in general about relationships. But guess what? Once they get in a relationship, some of the same things that you could have said before they're in a relationship, and they'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense or whatever. Now they think it's about the person they're dating, and you just don't like this person. When really it might not even be about the person. It's just in general. Anybody who treats you like this, that's not healthy. That's not appropriate for them to do that. And if you can have that conversation before you need to have the conversation, that is best. But one of the things that Michael talked about during the master class that he shared with the girls, and I can't remember everything he shared, so the best thing you can do is get your girls signed up for that master class. And there's clips of him throughout all 8 of the sessions, but the one that I think he talks on the most is session number 6. Is the one I think that Michael talks on the most. But all of them are good. But one of the things he talked about, and he mentioned it briefly about his daughter, you know, about when she wanted to know, because we'll go into when, where, and how, is when should you start dating? He's like, it's not an age for him. It's about when, because somebody could be mature at 18 and another could be mature enough at 16. And he was like, it's about how you manage other relationships. And for him, because he's a person of faith, he's like, here are the parameters. When I see that you can manage a relationship effectively with God, where, you know, that's important and you prioritize that. When you can, you have a healthy relationship with your siblings, and you have a healthy relationship with your parents and with your friends, because if you don't have a healthy relationship with them, then I'm putting you out there almost to the wolves, because that person then is gonna like be your person. And Dr. Tart actually said some things about that too. But anyway, so that's when, It's before they need it. Where I laugh and I tell parents, they laugh at me when I say this, but I said, one place, a good place to have it is in the car when you're going at a high enough speed where they can't jump out. And I say that jokingly, but the thing about a car is because you're not looking them in the face, so it does seem less confrontational because you're beside each other. You have a captive audience. They have to, they're in the car going to a certain destination, going a long drive somewhere. But that's one place in a car. My neighbor actually got my book, and she, every Friday night, she would take her two daughters, they were both teenagers, she would take her two daughters out to dinner, and they would discuss the book over dinner. So that became the resource that she used to make it easier for her to have the conversation, because they were learning without it being about them. And another one that I love was this guy had sent me an email. And no, he called me and he said he had been reading his daughter's diary. I wouldn't recommend that, but he said, and he had found out, she was 14. He had found out about some things that she had done and some things that she was planning to do. And he said, I've got to have your book. And he said, I can't even wait for you to mail it to me. Can I come by your house and pick it up? So I said, sure. So 2 weeks later, he called me and he said, my daughter and I, it was his stepdaughter actually, my stepdaughter and I reread a chapter of your book, or we went through a chapter of your book every night. And he said, initially my daughter didn't want to do it. And he said, but by the third chapter, like she was coming home from school saying, what time are we doing the book tonight? And he said, I was able to address everything that she had written in her diary without her knowing that I read her diary, because I didn't have to make it about her. But yet everything that she had said she was going to do or that she had done, you covered it in your book. So he was able to use the book to have those conversations, and that it made it a lot more effective because he didn't even have to confront her about her behavior. If you haven't signed up for my blog where I send out articles periodically, I would encourage you to do that, because I just had a woman say that she would forward my blog post to her daughter. Because a lot of times, sometimes, like one time I wrote a blog about how I talked a teen girl out of having sex on Instagram who had sent me a message. And what I told her is exactly what any mom who has a daughter who wants to have sex could tell her daughter. And she's like, I forward a lot of your messages on to my daughter. I have a ton of videos on Instagram. And I had a mom who commented under one of my videos on Instagram, and she said, my daughter and I had a really, really interesting conversation on the way to school this morning about this video. And so even if it's not my stuff, if you can find resources to be able to facilitate a conversation, I think that's ideal. So that's kind of how you can have it. Start out by talking about relationships instead of sex. Oh, and here's the thing, even when moms request for me to talk to their daughters and they tell me what their daughter's going through, I think what makes me effective is that I rarely talk about the girl's problem unless they bring it up when I'm doing my counseling session. Because I've been doing this for 20 years. I have 17,000 letters and hundreds of stories that about anything you can tell me that your daughter is doing, thinking about doing, or has done, I guarantee you I have a story about it. And so what I do is I just share those stories with the girl that I'm doing a counseling session with or a coaching session with, and allow her to see herself in the story without me ever having to tell her how crazy her behavior is. It's very effective, and I would highly recommend it for you as well. Here's the thing that I had put down that I wanted to share is a mom had asked me one day, she said, how much should I share with my daughter about my choices when I was a teenager? And she said, when I was 16, she said, I got pregnant, I had an abortion. And she said, when I went to college, I got pregnant again and I had a second abortion. And she said, my daughter right now is getting ready to start dating. And I see some of her in me. Like I see some of the traits and similarities in her relationship, and I don't want her to go down the same path that I did. But I'm afraid if I tell her about my choices that she's going to judge me and she's not going to respect me anymore. And so I said to the mom, I think it's okay for you to tell your daughter about your regrets without telling her every single detail. And I said, so I'm not sure at her age at 16, I don't know that she is mature enough to handle the fact that you had an abortion. But, you know, I don't think it's a problem with telling her that you had sex when you were a teenager and why you regret having sex. You know. So the next day I went to school and I asked the students, I said, y'all, I want your opinion. This is what a mom just asked me yesterday. What would you say? I would tell you 90-something% of the students said that they felt like the mom should tell her everything, should tell her about the abortion. And I was kind of surprised. And I was like, so they're like, because that's going to make her mom more relatable. And that's going to make her want to listen to her mom more because her mom is just not being hard on her because she doesn't want her to have fun. The mom is telling her based on what happened to her. Now, and I said, but y'all wouldn't judge your parents if they said that? And 90-something% of them said that they wouldn't judge them. But there were a couple of girls in there who said, low key, I probably would. She said, but I mean, I'm going to feel some kind of way. It's like, how are you going to tell me? And then you did the same thing. But the most of them said they would share everything. So I don't know. I was like, well, I gave her bad advice. Or I don't know that it was bad advice, but I gave her different advice than what teenagers said was effective. I don't know. So this is good. So I started asking teens. So one of the things, what time is it? Oh, I started asking teens, about them having good relationships with their moms. I started out with 8th graders, and so I was just talking to girls, and so I specifically said moms. And so some of the girls would say they had a good relationship, and some of the others were like, no, my mom and I, we don't get along, or we don't talk about it. But the interesting thing is most of them said they wish they did get along with their mom. So it's not that they don't want to have a relationship. They really do. And so they started saying, I said, what makes it difficult for you to have a good relationship with your mom? Because some of the girls were saying, I can tell my friends' mom stuff that I can't tell my mom, or I get along with my friends' moms and I get along with other adults. And I said, so what are things that your moms are doing that you don't think is effective? And what are the things that they're doing that you do like that they're doing that you want to make sure you're going to do with your kids? Or how would you parent differently, and how are you going to parent the same? And so I tell you, I have over 100 responses, and some of them I got repeatedly. And I'm just mentioning the ones related to their sexual decisions, but there were a lot others just around communication, around their mental health, just around like how they related. So if this is something that you'd be interested in me doing another session on just effective communication, how to have a good relationship with your daughter, like let me know that, because I feel like I'm sitting in a gold mine. And I said I was going to write a book, but after writing 2 books, I'm like, that's like after somebody has a child and somebody says, are you going to have another child? They're like, let me get over the memory of how painful childbirth was before you ask me if I'm going to have another child. That's how I feel about when people say, when are you going to write a book for parents? I'm like, look. But anyway, so let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. And I think this is probably an easy way to do it. For me, it's easier for me to do it as a workshop than it is to write a book. But so I just feel like I'm sitting on a gold mine. And one of the things that they said, and this was the one that I thought was really huge, they said, I'm not going to be judgmental. And more than one girl said this. And I always say, tell me more, because I know whenever they give me something, there's a backstory. So this girl said, I hear the things my mom says about other teen girls who make poor choices about sex, whether it's sending nude pictures, having sex, or getting pregnant. She talks about how stupid they were, and she's very judgmental. So if I ever make any of those choices, my mom will be the last person I want to tell, because I know she'd judge me the same way she's judging other teen girls. And I don't think moms have ever thought about how much your daughters may be reading into how you talk or feel about their friends or other teen girls. And so you always want to know you always want your daughter to be able to come and tell you things, but she's never going to tell you if she thinks you're going to judge her. That one was huge to me. I was like, I don't think the average mom knows that y'all listening, even when she's talking about your friends. And that's the other thing they say. They don't tell you about their friends. Like, you want to know what's going on with your friends or whatever. They're like, I'm not going to tell her because I know she's going to judge my friend, and then she's not going to want me to be friends with my friend. And so I'm not going to tell her. So this whole, just be compassionate when you're talking about other girls. Even when you find out that they've made decisions that you don't think were the best decisions, just be very compassionate because they're listening. So then this girl says, I'm going to respect my child's privacy and not tell my family and friends whenever she makes a bad choice. I say, tell me more. She said, I've heard my mom on the phone more than once telling other family members about poor choices that I made. So it makes me not want to share anything with her because I know she can't keep a secret. And I know this is hard. My nieces and nephews say the same thing about my sisters. They're like, she gonna tell all the other family every time I do stuff. And then it makes them not want to come around the family because they want it. Is the family gonna be looking at me funny because they know that I did something stupid? But, and I'll have to tell you a story about a 16-year-old girl who came to me after class. And it was right after Thanksgiving one year. It was in 1st of December. And she told me that over the Thanksgiving break, she had had sex with a guy who she had been friends with since the 3rd grade. And they were just friends. But she had started catching feelings for him. So they decided to have sex. And she said the next day, she called him and she said about last night. And he said, oh, that was just sex for me. I'm not trying to have a relationship. And she said it broke her heart, but she didn't want to let on that it broke her heart because she didn't want to ruin the friendship. So she just played it off. And she was like, oh, yeah, for me, too. That was just sex for me, too. She said, I went home and I cried myself to sleep. And so the reason she had come to talk to me was because she wanted to know where she could get tested for STDs without her mom finding out. Because she says, I know that my friend had slept around and I hadn't really thought about getting an STD until I heard you speak today. Imagine that. They don't even think about STDs. And she said, and my mom, she said 18 months ago, I had sex for the first time and I contracted chlamydia. The very first time she had sex, she got chlamydia. And she said, my mom called me all kind of names. She told all of her sisters. She told all of my family members what I had done. And she said, but my mom thinks I stopped having sex. And since that partner 18 months ago, I've had 3 more. And so now here she is needing to get checked for an STD, but she says, I'm not going to go back and tell my mom based on how she reacted the first time and based on the fact that she told everybody. And let me tell you something, the way you react the first time your child tells you about a bad choice will determine whether they will ever tell you about a bad choice again. So that's why you need to make sure, even if you have to go and sleep on it and just say, we'll talk about this tomorrow so that you can calm down and that you can respond and not react. That's the best thing you can do. Because you never want your child to say, I'm not going to tell my mom because she's going to kill me. What you always want your child to say is, I need to tell my mom because I know she's going to help me get through this. That doesn't mean they don't have consequences for their choices. But all of the name calling and the anger and the yelling and the screaming, especially the name calling, that's what you want to do. So you're just going to be a garden tool, that, all of that. Ooh, that's not good. And here's the other thing, the other part of this that is a teachable moment. She said that she had had 4 sexual partners, and she said, every time after I've had sex, I've always gone home and cried after the fact. And I said, so why do you keep having sex? If you've had sex 4 times, and after all 4 of these sexual encounters, you went home and cried yourself to sleep, why are you still having sex? And she said, because my confidence is under the floor. And she said, my parents are divorced. My dad wasn't around a lot when I was younger, but then when he did come around, all he did was talk about my weight. And he always said, you need to pull away from the table, little girl, you're getting a little chunky. So I thought I was fat. And I said, if my dad thinks I'm fat, every guy's going to think I'm fat. And so she said, every time a guy asked me to have sex, whether I was dating him or not, in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe he doesn't think I'm fat. So she's on this quest to try to build her confidence back up and feel like, it's so complicated. This girl says, I won't assume that my child is going to make the same mistakes I made or her older siblings made. I said, tell me more. She said, I feel like I'm not allowed to do things just because my mom and my older sister ended up having sex at a young age. My mom is extra strict on me. I'm not given the benefit of the doubt because of their choices in the past. And I hear that one a lot too. And, I think the best thing to do is to trust your child until they prove that they're not trustworthy. And that might be tough, but the fact that parents don't trust their daughters is one of the ones that I hear repeatedly, that my mom doesn't trust me. And now, trust me, when they say some of the things that they say they would parent differently, I have to put them in check. I'm like, girl, please. Because I think they're like, any mom in their right mind would do what you say you hate that your mom does. The other thing that I tell them is I say, I guarantee you some of the things that your parents are doing when they were teenagers, they probably said the same thing. I'm never going to do this. I said, when you're on the other side of it, it's a totally different conversation. And I said, and some of the things that you say you're not going to do, guess what? When you have kids, you're going to do some of the same things because you're looking at it through a different lens. So I try to help them understand that your moms aren't all crazy. I'm going to check my child's phone regularly. I thought this was interesting. So I said, say more. She said, my parents check my phone a couple times a year, but it should be more. Not because I'm doing anything wrong, but there are so many temptations to do bad things on my phone that it would keep me from giving in to temptation if I knew my parents may find out because they are checking my phone. And here's what parents don't realize is so many times, teenagers want you to be their scapegoat. They want you to be the out. They want to be able to tell their friends, oh, my parents would kill me if I did that. Even though they don't want to do it, they want to put the blame on you. They know sometimes that I can't trust myself. There's so many temptations that I need to have some kind of accountability. And for some parents, they need the parent to be their accountability. Now, there is a balance because you don't want to go to the too strict side, but there has to be some balance. I thought of a story, and then it left me right quick. I remember I was doing a talk for the Girl Scouts, a National Girl Scouts convention. And a girl, and this was years ago, and a girl said that she and her boyfriend, when they started dating, they agreed that we're not going to have sex. She was 16. She said when her mom found out she was having sex, her mom told her she wanted to put her on birth control pills. And she said, just in case. I don't want you to have sex, but now that you're in a relationship, I need to put you on the pill. And the girl said, I told my mom, no, I don't want to go on the pill. We've already said we're not going to have sex. If you put me on the pill, that's going to make it too easy to mess up. And I don't think parents understand that, because what this girl also heard is even though my mom doesn't want me to have sex, she doesn't trust me to not have enough discipline, self-control to not do it. So she's going to give me an escape just in case. And that's sending a different message than I think the mom wanted to send. And then so many times what girls will also tell me is that they love the fact that, they're afraid that if the boyfriend knows that they're on birth control pills, they're afraid that the pressure will be even more for them to have sex and not use a condom, because he'll say, we don't need to use the condom because you're on the pill. And so they're like, I don't want to be on the pill because then I think it's going to make it harder for me to tell him no, because then he's going to say, well, you're on the pill, so we don't have anything to worry about. And birth control is not disease control. That's all I'll say about that. But that's a whole nother conversation too. Whew. I could do a whole academy just with what moms need to know about this stuff, because I keep thinking of stuff, but I'm like, that's not on topic. This next girl says, this one was crazy. I won't give my child my credit card number. And I was like, this is an 8th grade girl. And I said, why? She said, I'll give her cash if she needs to pay for something because my parents gave me their credit card number and I used to call an Uber and sneak out without them knowing. And she said, I would do things that I had no business doing. But she's in the 8th grade saying this is what she used to do. And I'm like, she's like, I don't do it anymore. That's just what I used to do. And I'm like, you're in the 8th grade. How can you have I stopped doing it. And you're just in the 8th grade. I'm like, girl. And here's the thing. I was like, well, I don't get it. Like, when you call an Uber, you have to have a credit card. And then you get a text message or an email saying this charge is going against your credit card. And so another 9th grade girl said, no, but I have a debit card. And the debit card is tied to my email address. And so I have my debit card number tied into my Uber account. and it goes, so the receipt. So parents are giving their kids total access to be able to go and do anything they want to do without the parent even knowing or having a check. That blows my mind. I won't let her have social media, or I'll limit it at least. And she says there's so much negativity on social media that I wouldn't want her to spend too much time on it. And here's the interesting thing is, when the girl said I won't let her have social media, I said, do you have social media? And she's like, yeah. And I said, well, why are you going to say I'm not going to let my child have it if I have it? And she's like, yeah, that's because I've already have it. And so now that I have it, like, it's hard for me to get off of it. But I think if I don't give it to her at all, then that's the best decision. It's crazy. Oh, when I was telling you about my neighbor that I had taken her out to dinner, and she said she didn't have social media, about less than a year after I had taken her out to dinner, I had spoken for a mother-daughter, a daddy-daughter event for the Army, and a 17-year-old was there, and she told me she didn't have social media. And I said, is that because, I said, oh, you're the second teenager just told me you don't have social media. Why did you not? Why did you get off of it? And she said, oh, it wasn't my choice. She said, I made some bad decisions, and my parents made me get off. And she said, but it was the best thing they could have done. She said, I'm so much more focused. She said, I'm so much less stressed. She said, it was the best decision they could have made. And I said, wow, I bet your parents are really glad to know that you appreciate them making that decision. She was like, no, I would never tell them that I'm glad they made the decision. So just know there are things that you're doing and boundaries that you have for your kids that they may never tell you that they appreciate you having the boundaries, but they do. Oh, I need to move along. I'll let my daughter know who her father is and allow her to have a relationship with him. And this girl says, just because my mom doesn't get along with my dad shouldn't mean that I don't get to have a relationship with him. And I hear this a lot, especially in divorce situations where kids say I'm caught in the middle and I'm in a lose-lose situation because I feel like I'm going to make one of my parents mad no matter what I choose. And I'm always feeling like one is saying, do you like them better than you like me? Or do you like, one girl said her parents that her mom had her and hated her dad. Then her mom got married to another man and she has two younger sisters. And she says, I feel like every time my mom looks at me, she sees a person that she hates. But when she looks at my younger sisters, she sees two kids that were born in a loving relationship that she's still happy with. And so she felt like, and she had actually gone out and had sex. The mom had asked me to talk to her because of her poor decision making. And that was one of the things that she revealed to me, is that she didn't feel like her mom liked her as much as she did her younger siblings. So complicated, so complicated. I won't let my daughter go to her friend's house if I don't know or haven't met the friend's parents. This girl says, my parents let me go anywhere I want to go, whether they know the parents of my friends or not. And I've been at some of my friends' houses where bad things were happening and I shouldn't have been there to witness it. And I have so many stories of girls who said they were raped or molested at sleepovers by dads, stepdads, older brothers. So please don't just let your kids go to people's houses that you don't really know the values of their friends' parents. This girl says, in my 17 years of life, I had to grow up at a young age. I was introduced to porn when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade. My best friend at the time showed me one of her mom's videos, probably while she was at the best friend's house, and she showed me a website. And so this girl had went on to say in the rest of her letter that she ended up being addicted to porn because she got exposed at somebody else's house. So here are some ways to parent your teen girl in a sexualized world. Make an investment in yourself and your daughter. And the fact that you're attending this workshop or you've registered and purchased this workshop means you are making an investment in yourself to equip yourself to be able to help your daughter. But I would encourage you to also make an investment in your daughter and be intentional and proactive about getting her the information that she needs to make healthy decisions when it comes to sex. And whether those are my resources or not, just make sure don't assume that she doesn't need it. Don't allow the culture to be her primary teacher. When I ask kids, how many of you have had sex talk with your parents? No more than 50% of the kids ever raises their hand. I don't care what school, what area, what socioeconomic, it's less than 50%. I love this quote by Dennis Rainey that says, between interaction with the culture, media, and their peers, this year, your teenagers will be exposed to 100,000 messages about sex. How many of these will come from you? Somebody's talking to them. And it's a shame to have porn teach them, their friends teach them, the media teach them, and sometimes even schools teach them. So you need to have that conversation. Talk about the benefits of abstaining from sex just as much. I think it really needs to be more so than the consequence of having sex. I like to say I teach towards something and not away from something, which is one of the things that makes me so effective. And I'll tell you, of the 17,000 letters I've received from high school students, 97+% of them are all positive. Very small percentage of those letters do I get anything negative from kids. And it shocks parents, because I have an easier time talking teenagers out of having sex than I do convincing parents and adults that it's possible to talk teenagers out of having sex. This girl says, I just want to say thank you. I know that in my future relationships, I'd be asked to have sex. Getting asked wasn't the problem. Holding on to my virginity was. I thought to myself, what would truly stop me from engaging in sex if I had nothing to essentially prevent me? When you told us that having sex was selfish and could ruin my potential child's life, you gave me that something. And we always think kids are selfish, and I think they can be to a certain degree, but I have a much easier time talking them out of having sex based on what that choice could do to their future kids or their future spouse than I can by scaring them about their risk of getting an STD, because they think they're invincible. They don't think it'll ever happen to them. But when I say, how many of you want your kids to have a better life? 99% of them say, I want my kids to have a better life. And you need to help them understand that the kind of life their kids are going to have is not necessarily based on what they do when they become a parent, but it's just as important, and it's just as much impacted by what they're doing while they're teenagers. I love this quote from Andy Stanley that says, when you give up something now for something better later, that's not a sacrifice, that's an investment. It changes their motivation. It's not about what they're not being, oh, I can't do this. It's about, wow, me not doing this is going to make it possible for me to do something much better and greater later. Teach them towards something. Set boundaries for her so that she will know how to set her own. And I think that's one of the saddest things that I see. And remember, we talked about one of the reasons, big reasons, is girls don't know how to set boundaries. They don't even understand the importance of setting boundaries. Because I say the biggest mistake that teenagers make is trying to stop things after they get started and before they go too far. And the time to demonstrate self-control is not in the bedroom. You need self-control to keep you out of the bedroom. This girl says the one thing that has really stuck out is the need to set boundaries in a dating relationship. This is a challenge for me because I've not had any boundary lines in my life. Everything you said has encouraged me to set boundaries for the first time in my life. And she's a high school junior, so that's what, 16, 17 years old. It is a shame that this girl would say at 16 to 17 years old, she has absolutely not had any boundaries set in her life. And I'm going to show you a video clip. Well, the video clip is going to be next, I guess. I love this quote that says, the reward for saying no comes when our kids are the adults who know when to say no and when to say yes to themselves, who can delay gratification in order to accomplish greater achievements. No is not the goal, it's the road to yes. So just like I say, you teach towards something, not away from something. By you telling your kids no is allowing them to have a bigger yes. Like Andy Stanley said, when you give up something now for something better later, that's not a sacrifice, that's an investment. You giving up, you saying no to them now is allowing them to, you're investing in their future. And I think, yeah, Dr. Phil lets a mom know. So let me give you the backdrop of this video. So this girl had, every time she had a breakup, she would just like spiral out of control, like depression. I don't know if she'd had a suicide attempt or whatever, but she just could not handle breakups. And so the mom brought her to the Dr. Phil show, and Dr. Phil talks to the mom about her responsibility to keep her out of these dating situations that she can't handle. So check out what he had to say.
Would you like to know why you're having these reactions so bad?
Sure.
One is, and I hate to sound like a Freudian, one of the things he got right is that daughters are really impacted by their relationships with their fathers. And if there's a really great relationship with their father, and that father makes that daughter feel like she is the princess, she is the most wonderful, special girl in the world, then it really makes her strong and feel good about herself and helps her to have a great self-image. And therefore, when some boy comes along and says, wow, you're really special, she goes like, yeah, I know that. And if that doesn't happen, and some boy comes along and blows in her ear and says, you're really special, she goes, oh, really? And she just leans in there like, oh my God, I've been waiting my whole life to hear that. The fact of the matter is, your dad's not really in the picture at this point, right? And so that makes you kind of vulnerable. The second thing, you said this, and I actually took it out of your tape piece, and I want to play that. Here's exactly what you said.
I didn't know how to handle the situation, so I broke down.
I didn't know how to handle the situation, so I broke down. So if I took you and put you in the cockpit of a jet airplane, would you know what to do?
No,
Would you know how to get it on the ground?
no,
What would likely happen?
crash.
Damn right. You would crash. Why? Because I don't know how to handle the situation. So nobody in their right mind would take a child and put them in a situation they don't know how to handle. And that's why she has a parent. A parent is supposed to keep kids out of situations they don't know how to handle. She still has stuffed animals on her bed, and you've got her in an adult relationship dealing with adult emotions and adult behaviors and adult pain in an adult-like breakup, and she doesn't have any more idea how to deal with that than she would landing an Airbus 380.
Yep.
The third reason is you've neglected the most important relationship in your life, and that's the one that you have with yourself. Tell me the 5 best things about you. Number 1,
Loyal,
okay, you're loyal.
dedicated, honest, I can tolerate a lot of stuff,
Okay, so you're tolerant, okay.
supportive.
Why did you have to dig so hard for that?
Had to think about it.
Do you think about those things when somebody breaks up with you? Do you think, well, you know what? They've just turned around and walked off from somebody that is loyal, dedicated, honest, very tolerant, and supportive. That's who they just walked away from, dummy. Do you ever think that?
No. Think about what I did wrong or how I wasn't good enough in this way or that way. And I think about how I just don't have the personality or the looks that they might want.
Well, boy, you rattle those off really quick. You seem to know the things that are negatives just on speed dial, but you really have to dig for the things that are good about you.
So I love the fact that he talked about the mom needed to keep her out of those situations, because these kids are basically practicing mini divorces, like at their ages. Like they're getting in a relationship, they're having sex, they're bonding with somebody, and then they're breaking up. They get into another one, they're bonding, they're breaking up. And and it breaks my heart when kids are so jaded at such a young age. That's why the longer they can delay dating, the better. The longer they can delay a heartbreak, trust issues. I had a 15-year-old girl in the class. She said, I'm done with relationships. I've cried my last tear. And I said, girl, you're 15. How are you so jaded at such a young age and you're only 15? And I'm like, think about if you could just hold off on relationships, you hold off on heartbreak, you hold off on trust issues, you can hold off on a lot of things that now you got to carry with you for the rest of your life. And then model and teach her about healthy relationships. And I know you probably heard the quote that says, more things are caught than taught. So them watching you do things can be more important than what you might tell them. Because if you tell them to do one thing, but they see you doing something else, then they're going to believe what you did more than they're going to believe what you're telling them to do. This girl says, before this message, I hated myself for my past relationship. I felt used. You taught me I'm better than that. And he really did me a favor when he left. My dad abused my mom. I think that's why I thought my ex-boyfriend treated me, how my ex-boyfriend treated me was okay, because I saw my dad always scream and use my mom, and still does, even though they're divorced. You taught me the difference between that and healthy. Thank you. So many of these girls don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. And when I ask the question, when I'm doing an assembly, and I'll ask girls, stand up if you know somebody who is in or has been in an abusive relationship. And I'll have sometimes a third of the audience that will stand up, and I'll say that number's low because some of y'all don't even know how to define an abusive relationship. And some of the stuff that you think is okay is really abusive, like all the jealousy stuff and all of this. But if they see their moms like in relationships where they're accepting stuff, and when I have girls and guys who'll say, my mom needs to hear this lesson just as much as I do, I'm like, wow. Help her know her value and her worth. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why girls are having sex. They don't know their value. They don't know their worth. This is a junior in college. She says, Miss Jackie, personally, I'm not a virgin, and I have been sexually active for some years, and it has really taken its toll on me. It is certainly not worth it. Falling in love over and over, giving your all to a person, and then being left with physical and emotional scars that torment you for years. I have always felt like I was selling myself too short, but I so desperately wanted to be loved. Sadly, I have been doing this simply from not knowing what I was worth, and I'm still not sure, but I'm willing to find out. Like, this is a 21-year-old. I don't know how old she was when she first started having sex. She said she's been sexually active for some years, but I guarantee you if she had had a crystal ball, and if she could have projected into the future, and if she could have seen that at 21 she was going to have this to say about how her life turned out, she probably would have never had sex. And she says she still doesn't know, but she's at least going to try to find out. I think one of the ways you can show her her worth and her value is by writing her a letter, because oftentimes the way teens feel about themselves is based on how they think their parents feel about them. So that determines a lot of how they feel about themselves. If they think their parents don't love them, they don't think they're lovable because their parents don't love them. So I have a letter. I have a template, a downloadable checklist that you can, it says the letter every mom should write her teen daughter. And it's at JackieBruton.com/letter. And it gives you examples of what you can say. It gives you categories like tell her what your dreams are for her future. Tell her what you wish somebody had told you when you were a teenager. Tell her how you feel about her. I mean, all of this. And then it gives you excerpts about wording that you can use. But you write it yourself, but it's a template. So let me show you another video where, and let me give you the backdrop about this. It's a Dr. Phil video where the mom brought her daughter on because the daughter is spoiled. I mean, this is the other extreme. I think this daughter's monthly allowance was $1,000 or $5,000 or something. This girl was in college. I think she was 19 or 20 years old. And she was out of control. I mean, and upset because the mom says she's spoiled and she can't get her to do anything. So this is what Dr. Phil said to this mom.
I want to say some things to you about your daughter. What I'm concerned about is her self-image. And self-image is the perception or mental picture that you have, your appearance, abilities, and personal worth. And I think when someone feels like they have to have all of these things in order to feel like they're presentable, to feel like they're worthy, to feel like they can be acceptable, then they don't have much self-worth.
Well, my mom made me feel that way.
Yeah, I've said that overindulgence is a form of child abuse. It does cripple a child. You see, a child forms their self-image, their self-worth by making attributions to themselves. We watch ourselves in situations and say, wow, I did that. I overcame that. I accomplished that. I did that. I learned about myself that way. So I have confidence that I can do these things. She's saying, you screwed up. You parented me that way, but it's not over.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Yes.
I guarantee
sure.
it's not over. Reparenting. So many parents have to have the opportunity to reparent their child. So you guys need to redefine your relationship.
How do we do that?
You give her more love and less money. And
I feel like it's too late for that.
yeah,
I don't want love anymore.
well, do with it as you will, but that's what she needs to have.
Wow. Overindulgence is a form of child abuse. Never heard it put that way, but I agree. And he says she's crippling her by giving her all this stuff and not allowing her to build any confidence because she's accomplished anything. And makes sense. I think it's so sad that the girl said, I don't want her love anymore. I mean, but that's how you build their self-value and self-worth. It's not by focusing on how they look and the things that they have. It's allowing them to feel good about themselves, that they have value, and not that their value is based on anything material, but the value is based on how they see themselves and their accomplishments. And then meet her 5 needs. And these are 5 needs that Nellie Harden with the Family Project podcast said that every teen girl has. And I don't think it's just teen girls. I think every person has these. They have a need to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to belong, and to have purpose. And I think if a parent could make sure their daughter knows that they're seen, that their daughter knows that she has a voice and that her voice is listened to, and it's not in a attitude of kids are be seen and not heard, but I value what you have to say. That she feels like she's loved, that she feels like she has a place where she belongs, and help her find a purpose for her life. I think if a girl, you can meet these 5 needs. Remember the quote that says, behind every behavior is a feeling, and beneath every feeling is a need. It's usually one of these 5 needs. And if you can meet the need, you can focus on the need, you can deal with the cause and not the symptom. So which one of these 5 things does your daughter need more help in knowing and having satisfied? Does that make sense what I just said? I said it kind of awkwardly. But anyway, so I think that kind of summarizes everything. If there's anything that you can take away from this, is the best way to parent a teen girl in a sexualized world is to make sure that you have met these 5 needs. I think that's a great way to summarize it. Thanks to Nellie with the Family Project podcast, which is an awesome podcast, by the way. So here are free resources that are available online for parents. There's a ebook that I have you can download called 7 Things Every Parent of a Teen Needs to Know Before Having to Talk. And I said the talk, but remember I said that's a misnomer. It's not the talk. It's a series of conversations for a long time. And then the letter, the template for the letter, this letter every teen mom should write her teen daughter. And then, I have these backwards, my bad. So there's 10 ways to raise a daughter who's fab, and we'll talk about that in just a second. There's a checklist that you can download, and that one is Fab for Moms. Is where you get the checklist. But I'm going to tell you about an e-course I have related to that checklist in just a second. And then here are the resources that are available online for your daughter. I have the book for teen girl and son, 7 Secrets Guys Will Never Tell You, A Teen Girl's Guide on Love, Sex, and Relationships. This is an amazing book. The response I've gotten from it has just been amazing. And then mom started to say, what about my son? I want my son to have the same information. So I wrote a book for teen guys this year called The Truth About Sex, Real Stories from Teen Guys Like You. A lot of the letters that I've gotten from teenagers are included in both of those books. I also have DVDs. One, the Sex Talk Every Teen Girl Needs to Hear, the Sex Talk Every Teen Guy Needs to Hear, and then the Sex Talk Every Parent Needs to Have. And then I have magnets that are on my website where the girl can put it on her locker. But the first one is 10 Things Every Teen Girl Needs to Be Fab. And then the magnet for moms is 10 Ways to Raise a Daughter Who's Fab, which directly correlate to the 10 things. And then here are my online resources available for teens. We talked about the Dating Boundaries 101 virtual guide. There's a ebook in there that she can fill in, a digital ebook that she can fill in. It asks questions. As she watches the video, she fills in the blanks. And then at the end, there's a one-pager game plan that she can fill in and then print out. And that's her game plan about her boundaries. These are the boundaries I'm going to keep, I'm going to have so that I can not have sex. And then I told you about the 7 Secrets Reveal Masterclass for teen girls that I did. There are 8 sessions, and they're based on the seven chapters in my book, or the seven secrets in my book. And then there was a recap kind of summary session, which was number 8. And I interviewed over 15 guests. So there's a teen mom, a teen dad. There are 2 college students. There are 3 couples. One couple waited, they were both virgins when they got married. One couple, one was a virgin, the girl was a virgin, the guy wasn't. The second couple, neither one were virgins, but all 3 of the couples waited till they got married to have sex. And they share their stories about, why they made the decision, how they were able to make their decision. Michael is on there. And then I have a teenage boy, a college age boy, and a 23-year-old boy. So the secrets are not just, they kind of confirm everything that's in the book. And then after I did that one, mom started saying, well, I have a son, so can you do a masterclass for teen boys? So I did one for boys called Boys to Men Masterclass, Life Skills Training on Sex, Manhood, and Faith. And I have 10 guests that I interviewed for this one. So they're not just hearing from me, but I have 10 male guests that I interviewed that are in each one of those sessions. And there are 5 sessions. Each one of these sessions, you can purchase them individually. You don't have to purchase them in any order. And you'll have 24 hours to watch the video as much as you want to. So don't purchase it until you're ready to watch the video, because you only have 24-hour access to the to each one of the sessions. And then resources available for moms. I have a e-course called How to Have the Tough Conversations with Teen Daughters. And that's 3 videos, and there are 3 conversations that I think parents are probably consider tough based on what they've told me. The first tough conversation is how to have the conversation about whether they've been raped or molested. The second one is how to have the conversation about pornography. And the third one is how to have the conversation with your daughter about not having sex when she's a teenager, when she knows that you had sex when you were a teenager. Because that's what I often hear from moms, as this is tough for me because I feel like I'm being a hypocrite because I'm telling her to do something I didn't do. And so there are 3 videos, and in each video I talk to the mom and then I talk to the daughter. And so that's online. And then my latest one is 10 Ways to Raise a Daughter Who's Fab. And so initially you will get the download of the free checklist, and then it'll give you the opportunity to purchase the e-course. The e-course is 10 videos. Each video is anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes long. And at the end of each one of the videos, there are 3 actionable steps that you can take immediately for each one of those 10 ways. So there are 30 actionable steps that you can take. And I guarantee you, if you watch all those videos and do the practical steps, like, you will have a daughter who is focused, authentic, and brave. And so let me read you a testimonial from a mom who actually went through the e-course. She says, I watched all 10 videos and they were wonderful. Every single one had amazing information and practical tips. As a mom of all girls, one being 16 now, I love that you literally give the what to do related to the specific topic you're talking about. Having the practical tools with how to tackle these vital things to raise my daughter to be fab is awesome and so helpful. You make it doable without my daughter feeling like she's getting another lecture. Even the practical tools that you give us moms with how to suggest things to our husbands to help them understand the importance of connecting with their daughters was helpful. In a world that is full of lies and deception, specifically towards our daughters, we have to do better. You are helping equip moms to do that, and I genuinely thank you from the bottom of my heart. This needs to be heard by every mother everywhere so that these beautiful, worthy, and significant young girls will be empowered, equipped, encouraged, and challenged to be difference makers. I love that. I have other testimonials from moms too, but I love that one. Like I said earlier, sometimes I feel like I have the cure to cancer and I can't find the patients. Like, because I'm in the schools, well, before I get to that, just please provide feedback about this workshop and spread the word to anybody else, any of your mom friends, so that they can register for it, so that I can help as many teen girls as possible, because I know that the best way for me to help teen girls is to equip their parents. And I know that you need to be the primary educator. Here are ways to stay in touch. Instagram, I have a ton of videos on Instagram. It's at Jackie B Speaks. My YouTube is at Jackie B Speaks. And then my website is JackieBruton.com, and my academy, where I have all my e-courses, are at JackieBAcademy.com. So what I was saying is that sometimes I feel like that I have the cure to cancer and I can't find the patients because I see and hear the stories of what girls are dealing with every single day when I'm in the schools, and it breaks my heart. And I hate it when I hear girls who say they can't talk to their moms, they don't have a good relationship with their moms, and they can tell me stuff they can't tell their moms. I don't want them to be able to tell me things that they can't tell their moms. I want their moms to be equipped to be their first educator and their safe space to be able to come. And this culture is so jacked up that these girls are struggling. They are struggling doing things that they don't really want to do. They know it's not fulfilling. They know it's not making them happy. And they just don't know how to navigate it. And so I don't know what else to do to try to get moms to understand, like, you got to be proactive. You got to be intentional. Like, you got to invest in yourself and invest in your future daughter. Not your future daughter, in your current daughter. This is what I say to the kids about their future kids. But anyway, thank you so much. Make sure you send me feedback on like what you thought about it. If there are other workshops that you want me to do, if there are other things that you want me to talk about, if you have questions, please reach out at JackieBruton.com. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me. And I hope to see you on another workshop. Bye-bye.